What's up, guys? I'm back again today. Gonna be covering the Hatchet this go around. Another melee weapon. It's kind of been my focus right now. I don't know how interested I'll be in ranged weapons coming into the beta here. So that being said, again, I'm just gonna focus on melee weapons for right now. With, of course, I'm gonna a slight exception today. We've got the Hatchet, which does have the throwing tree. And what that it's kind of a mid-ranged variant to the Hatchet. It's a pretty interesting flavor, but nonetheless, I'm gonna dive in. I want to do it a little different than I have been doing. Usually, I'll go over the three abilities from each tree, go over the passives, but I'm actually gonna break down kind of a build or two that I have in mind for the Hatchet. I don't know if I'm gonna use this weapon in the beta, just because of how much testing and thoughts and stuff are out there for it. A lot of resources, but I'll still touch on it nonetheless, and I may just pick it up anyways. My kind of idea at this point is to go Great Axe in one slot, and maybe a throw something like this variant, this throwing Berserk variant in the back bar as a backup weapon. I know it doesn't. From my understanding, it's not meta. It by no means don't assume that it is. But I'm not interested in the meta. I'm interested in playing the game and having fun, right? So I played Nelly Shaman for many years, and though I didn't get to, I got sat a lot. I still enjoyed playing it. So shout out to Ellie Shamans and WoW. But anyways, plenty of rambling. Let's just take a look here. So I'll just kind of cover real quick. You've got Berserker, which is a melee kind of focus. Light attacks, buffing yourself, just kind of being an all-around brawler, right? And then, of course, the throwing tree here focuses almost entirely on throwing weapons. There's a few light attack bonuses sprinkled in here so that you can talent more than just pure Berserker if you'd like, right? But what I think what's really cool, of course, you've got the passive here that gives you the your right mouse button becomes a thrown weapon rather than a block, right? That's this is kind of the cherry right here. This is the most important talent in the throwing tree if you do want to throw. What's really cool is it opens up the ability to randomly crit with throws. You can crit headshots, gives you an extra 5% crit. Every successful third hit with the thrown axe is crit. And of course, every successful light or thrown crit will regenerate 20 stamina. So that's important, rather. It also ties into this. Again, light attacks and aim throws will regenerate 20 stamina on targets with an active debuff. So the issue with stamina in this build and in the throwing tree is that is actually your resource for using the hatchet as a throwing weapon, rather than carrying around a stack of 500 hatchets. Might get a little heavy, right? This is what you have to do. So it's going to be difficult, I think, in a PvP situation to kind of maintain debuffs and maintain that stamina. So I really think as a throwing weapon or a back bar, this kind of acts more as like a survivability utility weapon. But if you do, you're in a duel 1v1, something like that, you find yourself trapped by like a musket, just for an example, you could, as like a great axe or a sword or somebody, you can pull this out, and now all of a sudden, that trap has a lot less value for the guy, because now you can hit him from range, right? So I do think there is some hidden benefit in that aspect. There's a lot of CC in the game that is anti-melee, right? So having that ranged option as a melee just really opens you up, I believe. But only time will tell, right? We've only got a few more days, then we can figure it out. But yeah. So in this variant, I'm gonna take Berserk, right? I'm gonna buff it up all the way down. You get 20% increased damage. The way Berserk works, you get a 15-second buff, right? And basically all of these just buff the buff, right? So off the rip, you've got 20% damage. You can get 20% movement speed. From my understanding, this actually reads different now. my understanding, you heal every 5 seconds, right? It's a 15 seconds, so 5, 10, and 15, and it heals for more on each tick. The way it reads here is that at the end of Berserk, you'll heal for 30% of your maximum health. So kind of take that as you will. The next two kind of just help you stay on your target, right? You're immune to stuns, slows, and roots for that 15-second duration, and your attacks are uninterruptible during that duration. So you can't be staggered while you're attacking, right? Really nice, great. It's only a 15-second cooldown. Now, just do note that the buff lasts for 15 seconds. Then the cooldown begins, so it'll take another 15 seconds. It's a 30-second window, right? But what I would take on top of that, of course, I would take my passives for throwing, right? Then I would take Rending Throw. This applies a 10% rend for 4 seconds. Great utility. But what you can do is you can actually buff it so that if you're far enough, if you're 8 meters or further from the target, when you hit them with this, it actually puts a 20% rend, right, for 6 seconds. And what rend does, it just it reduces or it makes the target take more damage, right? So great ability right there. You can go ahead and the next two abilities kind of tie in this theme of debuffs that's sprinkled throughout the throwing tree. You will do 20% more damage if another debuff is already applied from you, of course. And then you can reduce the cooldown of this by 20%. So it's 3 seconds, right? If the target does have a debuff. So again, I believe you can forego second wind just because this specific build I envision it as a single target boss build, or maybe you're in an expedition and you're just on a single mob, right? You'll be able to get some debuffs rolling, and just I don't think you'll be able to or necessarily have to recast these abilities a ton. So again, I don't, and because we're not taking social distancing, it kind of seems like you want to open up with rending, considering like the gap range factor here. So I just don't know how well second wind ties in to the build. That's everyone's opinion. Or, you can kind of figure that out for yourself, though, right? And then of course we've got infected throw. So this one, it's similar to rending throw. However, it's a little bit slower. It's another overhead, but instead of smacking the ground, you're actually of course throwing it. But it does have a little bit of a wind up. Does 130 weapon damage. Getting ahead of myself. But what's really unique is it applies 2 debuffs. It applies a disease and weaken, right? And that lasts for 5 seconds. What disease is going to do? It's going to like if you're a healer or like Great Axe or even Hatchet, it's got some self-healing aspects, right? Well, that healing is going to be 30% less potent, right? So a heal for 100 is only going to be 70, right? And then, of course, weaken, what that's going to do is just going to reduce a target's damage by 10%. That's great. Even in PvP, that would be great versus tank, heal, or DPS, right? Both of these debuffs. So great utility there. Of course, you can buff it up to where the duration of the disease and the weaken are increased to 8 seconds, right? Rather than 5. But the target has to be below 30% health. So seems kind of odd to line that up, right? The target's already low health. I'm hoping it's not alive much longer, but maybe it just kind of helps you secure kills or keeps, of course, keeps the target gimped while you're trying to finish them off. And then the final option here is pretty unique. What it does is it puts a little gas cloud on the ground. I don't know if it puts it on the ground when you hit the target, but if you hit the ground, I think it puts it there. I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure it puts it both times, but really, I think it's going to be kind of more of a high skill ability, but we can obviously see the utility that it brings, right? But what's really unique that kind of caps this whole build off, right, where I think that it really brings something to the table for like a boss fight or just a single mob that's high health, right, is in the ultimate here, persistent hindrance. And what happens is every time you hit with one of those throwing hits, right, you're going to extend your debuffs by 2 seconds. So you can actually, you can get a rending throw off. It's only 4 seconds, right? Maybe you can get it to 6. but now all of a sudden, spam out 3, 4 of your throws, right? And that's all of a sudden you're adding 6, 8 seconds to that debuff. Get you another infected throw out here, or another throw, more debuffs, and then just continue stacking them up. So you may not even, unless for some reason it's just such a DPS gain to go ahead and throw these, or maybe you can use them as gap fillers when you are running low on stamina, right? You need to regen some, but it almost seems like you won't need to recast these abilities once if you can keep your debuffs up, right? And from the way it reads, at least theory crafting here, seems like you can. That's great, right? Tons of added benefit. These debuffs are going to affect your entire party, not just you, and that's where the real value comes from, right? Then of course, just to kind of just put in perspective, cap it off. You've got Berserk here, which is gonna especially if the heal is how it reads now, or from what more recent things I've seen, you're kind of ranged like a mid-range DPS that you bring tons of utility with debuffs and keeping those up, and then of course you're able to just kind of be a tank brawler here. Not really tank, but like you can take hits, you can heal yourself. You can you've got uptime, you can clear these effects off of you. Granted, they may not always be present in a PvE fight, an expedition, but 20% movement. You just have so much utility. You're gonna be able to keep Berserker up so often, and then you're just focused on those throws. I think there's a lot of potential here in specific situations, right? It's highly situational, but nonetheless very, very interesting. Real quick too, and I'm for anybody that is interested in just kind of figuring these things out. I'm not going over this build quite the same way that I did the past two, but if you are interested in just diving in and figuring out what's up with talent builds and weapons, go to newworldfans.com. That's where I'm at right now, and you can make all the builds you want. You can save them. It's really great, but yeah, I just wanted to transition, do something a little different this time. Actually, cover some builds, right? So now, if I were to go more of maybe a PvP version of this build, and I wanted to focus more on, like, say, melee, gap closing, things like that, I'd actually go ahead and kind of go this route here. Let me pick them up real quick. That one's what if, boom, boom. Pick that up. Then we've got one extra. I think it's this one that I choose to go with. So the way this build kind of works, you're going to be using your light attacks. Obviously, you're not a range, right? But you do get a lot of benefits from the throwing tree that are kind of sprinkled in here, and you'll also still get rending throw with the kind of ranged added to it. So if you're trapped by a musket, right? It only lasts a couple seconds. Maybe get a toss or two off, and then throw rending throw, right? And then get on them. You can also forego rending throw and pick up social distancing to have the slow for PvP, right? But it does require you to really get the added benefit. You want to take both of these passives, which then in return is going to require you to toss out one of these passives, right? Or perhaps one of these 3 passives. So, you could get rid of some defensiveness to pick that third one up. You can kind of just tweak it how you like, whatever feels good to you, but just want to bring light to some options here. But regardless, you're going to have Berserk, all the added benefits of that. You've got Defy Death, which kind of helps you not die in kind of clutch situations. You've got Feral Rush here. So one thing I will say, I guess, about Feral Rush, if you're not so concerned about the root, which is highly situational, you can forego that, right, and pick up. If it was a PvP situation, maybe I want the added utility here. Perhaps maybe in a PvE situation, I want the cooldown reduction, right? You can kind of go. You could even go so far as to get rid of Dispatch, because again, I don't think Feral Rush is is the bee's knees. It's a great ability. It's a great gap closer, but it already has so much kind of decent meat to it, right? With 100%, then a second ability at 115, 12-second cooldown, really short. It's just a great ability all around, and because these passives don't do a whole lot for it, I don't think it's the most important. I would almost always forego crippling strikes and just only on occasion take dispatch. But yeah, this build right here is I think it's a little bit more viable if you wanted this to be maybe a main weapon or not necessarily like a weapon that you just swap to in specific situations, right? Compared to like the throwing build we had, but more so like get through with your main weapons cooldowns like a warhammer or a great axe that have longer cooldowns, right? And maybe aren't the best force sustained. Then swamp over to your light or to your hatchet here rather, and just kind of wail on things with your light attacks. You're going to be a little bit more tankier because of berserk, anyways, and you've got the heals, all that jazz. So yeah, if you're looking for looking to use the hatchet a little bit more, I guess, than just throwing it around, this is definitely a build to consider. Now, of course, you could always take Raging Torrent in place of Rending Throw. I'd really only do this in a PvE situation, and really only in perhaps an AoE situation. It really depends on if you can get enough benefit from this versus like the Rend, which is going to affect your whole party, right? But yeah, overall though, I'll sum it up. Both of these trees I think are great. I think there's tons of potential with throwing tree if you can get good enough at landing those ranged shots, right? And of course berserking, the berserker tree that gives berserk best ability in the game from my opinion, just my opinion. Great weapon, well balanced. There's really not a lot more to be said, right? It's I think it's in a better spot than both the Great Axe and the Warhammer. If you're looking for something maybe a little bit more along the lines of meta, I'd go with a Berserker Hatchet build. Yeah. I don't know if I can ramble on much more about it, but yeah, guys, that's about it. If you like the video, be sure to thumbs it up. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, be sure to leave them down below. I'll always respond to those. And yeah, if you want to see more like this, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.